Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. You know how much we love to get our hands dirty with some really interesting sources, and today is no exception.
Oh yeah, this one's pretty special.
It is, and the title alone is an adventure. Practice English speaking, learn English through story-graded reader, improve your English.txt. Quite a mouthful, right?
Definitely gives you a sense of what we're dealing with, though.
It does. This is actually a retelling of Robinson Crusoe,
Oh yeah?
but it's designed for English language learners.
So we get to kind of see how the story is told in simplified English. That's fascinating.
It is, and that's what we're going to be looking at today, both the story itself and how the language is used to tell it.
So two adventures in one. Uncovering the plot of Robinson Crusoe and then also like noticing interesting stuff about how it's written.
Exactly. All right, so let's set sail, shall we? The story starts by introducing us to Robinson Crusoe. He's just 18 years old, restless, and wants to travel the world much to his father's disapproval.
Classic conflict right there. Stability versus adventure. And it's laid out so clearly right from the start.
It is. And of course, young and headstrong, Crusoe defies his father and sets off on his first voyage to London. And guess what happens? He encounters a massive storm.
Oh no.
Yeah, a real trial by fire. And the way the storm's described, even with the simplified language, you really get a sense of the danger and Crusoe's fear.
Yeah, I was noticing that they use words like big, strong, fear. It's basic vocabulary, but it really packs a punch.
It does. You can almost feel the wind and the waves just from those words.
Exactly. And for someone learning English, that's a powerful lesson in itself. Like
Yeah.
how to create a strong image with just a few words.
Right. Okay, so Crusoe survives this first terrifying voyage, but does that tame his wanderlust? Nope. He keeps going on more adventures,
Aw.
becomes a trader, and a sailor gets more and more ambitious and confident.
And there's this little detail I noticed that I thought was interesting. He starts to learn about how to command a ship, like the practical skills of being a captain.
Oh, interesting. So it's kind of hinting at his resourcefulness even before he gets stranded.
Exactly, like
Right.
foreshadowing a bit.
I like that. Okay, so speaking of getting stranded, that brings us to the big turning point, this shipwreck. A colossal storm, the ship's tossed around like a toy.
Oh man, talk about a change of plans.
Right. And the text uses a lot of repetition to really drive home the experience of this storm. Words like scared work pump, survive.
It's like you're right there with him feeling the desperation.
Exactly. And then bam, he's washed ashore on a deserted island alone, stripped of everything.
Talk about a test of resilience.
It is. And what I find fascinating is how methodically he goes about trying to survive. Like, the text lays out each step so clearly.
Oh yeah, you're right. It's like a little survival guide woven into the story.
It is. He scavenges for food, then he starts hunting. He builds a makeshift shelter, then a whole fortified home. He even creates a calendar to keep track of time.
Wow, that's dedication.
Right. But it's not just about physical survival, is it? He also needs mental stimulation. He needs to process what's happened to him.
And that's where that detail about him writing a book comes in. It's like a form of therapy almost.
It is. And it also ties in nicely with the whole language learning aspect of the text.
Right.
The act of writing is presented as this essential thing for well-being.
Clever. So he's surviving, but he's also thriving in his own way.
He is. He cultivates the land, starts growing corn, domesticates goats.
He's like a one-man civilization.
He is. The language they used to describe all this is so interesting, too. It's almost instructional, like a set of clear instructions.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Like a how-to guide for island living.
Exactly. But of course, even with all this success, the story doesn't shy away from the psychological impact of being alone.
No, definitely not. We see moments of despair, that longing for human connection, conversations with God.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even the most resourceful person can still feel lonely.
Exactly. And then just when you think that isolation is going to be too much, something amazing happens. He has a dream. And not just any dream, a dream in a pub.
Okay, that's a pretty specific dream. What happens in this pub dream?
Well, he sees his wife and she gets a message from her father, and his mom is cooking him soup.
Wow, that's a potent mix of the familiar and the longing.
It is almost like a foreshadowing of the changes to come.
That's a good point. And speaking of changes, that's a good place to pause for now. But when we come back, we'll be diving into one of the most iconic parts of the story, the arrival of Friday.
Can't wait.
Okay, so we're back and ready to continue our Robinson Crusoe adventure.
Yay.
We left off with him having that strange dream about a pub, remember?
Yeah, with his wife and his mom cooking soup, all those familiar things he was missing.
Exactly. And it's almost like this story is setting us up for a big shift, because guess what happens next?
I'm on the edge of my seat.
Friday arrives.
Friday.
Finally.
I know, right? Is one of the most famous parts of the story, and it's pretty intense. Crusoe rescues a prisoner from cannibals.
Whoa. So not just any rescue.
No, not at all.
Hmm.
And the language they use here is so vivid, even though it's supposed to be simplified.
Yeah.
You really feel the danger, the chaos, Crusoe's courage, too.
It's interesting though, right? Because Crusoe must be terrified. I mean, he's been alone for years, and now he's face to face with cannibals. Oh, absolutely. There's definitely that initial fear, but there's also this recognition that Friday's a human being too. Like, despite the circumstances, they have that shared humanity.
That's a good point. It's like their differences melt away in that moment of crisis.
Yeah, and that's what sets the stage for their friendship, which is one of the most beautiful parts of this story.
Absolutely. And they do such a good job of portraying that bond, even with the simple language. You see it in the small gestures, the way they learn to communicate, the fact that Crusoe starts teaching Friday English.
And Friday's a fast learner. It's like we're getting a little English lesson tucked into the adventure.
Which makes perfect sense, considering who this book is for.
Right. It's like showing you how language learning can actually happen, even in the most unexpected situations.
Totally. But Friday doesn't just bring companionship. He also brings knowledge about the surrounding islands.
Oh, yeah, that's right. And that changes things, doesn't it? Suddenly, Crusoe's not just trying to survive on his own. He has a partner in crime.
And a guide.
Yeah.
Which leads to them rescuing even more people.
Exactly. First Friday's father, then a Spanish sailor. It's like Crusoe's little island kingdom is expanding.
And his leadership skills are developing too.
Oh, totally. He's not just fending for himself anymore. He's responsible for others.
But just when you think things are settling down, bam, a mutiny on an English ship.
Oh, man. Talk about a curveball.
It's like the story just throws everything it can at Crusoe.
It does, and we see a different side of him here, his cunning, his strategic thinking.
He basically becomes a military strategist.
He does, and his actions lead to his escape after 27 years.
27 years. That's almost hard to grasp.
I know, right?
Sure.
Can you imagine finally leaving that island after so long?
Must have been a mix of emotions. Relief, joy, maybe even some sadness.
Oh, definitely. And that's what the language captures so well. It's that bittersweet feeling of saying goodbye to a place that's been your whole world.
And then to step back into a world that's completely different.
Exactly, because when Crusoe returns to England, things aren't quite what he expected.
Yeah, a lot can change in 27 years.
Oh, yeah. He finds himself a stranger in his own land, struggling to adjust to the new society, new technologies, even new clothes.
It's like he's traveled through time.
He has, and I love how Friday's perspective comes into play here. He's seeing everything with fresh eyes, which allows Crusoe to see his own country differently, too.
That's so interesting. It's like a commentary on culture and perspective.
It is, and just when Crusoe's trying to figure all this out, he gets some news from Brazil that changes everything.
Oh no, what now?
Remember his plantation? Oh, it turns out it's doing really well. A&D. He has a wife and a son.
What? Are you serious?
I am. Talk about a plot twist.
I know, after all those years thinking he'd lost everything in Brazil.
Right. And the way they deliver the skews in the story is so powerful. It's just a few short sentences, but you can feel the emotional weight of it.
It's like boom, boom, boom. Each phrase is another bombshell.
It is. So Crusoe rushes back to Brazil, and we get this beautiful reunion scene with his family.
Ah, that's nice.
Yeah.
I bet even with the simplified language, you can still feel the emotion.
Oh, you definitely can. And it's a good reminder that even with a limited vocabulary, you can still tell a powerful story.
Exactly. You don't need fancy words to convey deep feelings.
Nope. You just need the right words.
So Crusoe's back in Brazil with his family. Happy ending, right?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But there's one more chapter to this story.
Oh, really? What happens?
Years later, Crusoe decides to revisit the island.
The island. After all this time, why would he go back?
It's like a pilgrimage almost.
Yeah,
A way to come full circle, I think.
that makes sense. And what does he find when he gets there?
He finds Friday's people thriving, living in harmony with the island. They welcome him not as a castaway, but as a respected guest.
Wow, that's beautiful.
It is. It's like both Crusoe and the island have undergone this incredible transformation.
But it's another goodbye, too, isn't it?
It is. He leaves the island for the final time, carrying with him all the lessons he's learned and the memories he's made.
It's a fitting ending to a story that's taken us through so much.
It is shipwreck, survival, friendship, loss, betrayal, hope.
And all told through the lens of simplified English.
Exactly, which I think is what makes this deep dive so fascinating.
It is. It shows you that you don't need complex language to tell a complex story.
You don't. And it makes you wonder what we can learn from that. How can we be more direct, more impactful with our own communication?
Those are some good questions to ponder. I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about today.
I think so too. Thanks for joining us on this adventure, everyone. Well, here we are at the end of our Robinson Crusoe journey. It's been quite a ride, hasn't it?
It has, from shipwreck to rescue to rebuilding a life and then back to civilization again. It's amazing how much this story packs in.
It is. And what's really cool is that even though it's a simplified version, you don't lose any of that emotional depth. You
Right.
know, the core of the story is still there.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's a testament to how powerful simple storytelling can be.
It is, right? Like, we often think we need fancy language to express complex ideas, but this story proves that wrong.
Totally. Sometimes stripping things back to the basics makes the message even stronger.
It's like less is more.
Exactly. And it's especially important when you think about who this book is for English language learners.
Right. For them, this isn't just an adventure story. It's also a way to learn about how to use English effectively.
Yeah, it's like a masterclass in clear communication.
It is. How to express big emotions, how to describe complicated things, how to build a story that keeps you hooked.
And honestly, I think those are lessons we can all benefit from, even native English speakers.
Oh, absolutely. Sometimes we get so caught up in trying to sound smart that we lose sight of the message.
It's true. Simple and clear is always better.
So as we wrap up, I'm curious, what part of this Robinson Crusoe retelling stood out to you the most? Was it his resilience? The friendship with Friday? The challenges of returning home?
That's a tough one. I think for me, it's that final visit to the island. Years later when he goes back.
Oh, yeah, that's a powerful moment.
It is. It's
Well,
like he's coming full circle, acknowledging how much that place and that experience shaped him.
and finding a sense of peace with it.
Exactly. And it leaves us with a really interesting question to ponder. What would we do in Crusoe's shoes? After all those years alone, would we choose to go back to our old life or embrace the island life?
That's a great question. It makes you think about what really matters to you, doesn't it?
It does. Comfort and familiarity or freedom and simplicity. Tough choice.
It is. And I think that's the beauty of this story and of our deep dive today. It's not just about learning about Robinson Crusoe or even about language. It's about using those things as a way to reflect on our own lives, our own choices.
Well said. I think we've given our listeners a lot to chew on today.
We have. So on that note, thanks for joining us, everyone. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those adventure spirits alive.
Yeah.